Hello, extraordinary child of God. If you're looking to transition your life from where you are to where God wants you to be, then you're in the right place. And if this is your first time visiting my channel, be sure to hit the subscription bell as well as, not the subscription bell, the subscription button as well as the notification bell so that you don't miss another episode. Well, today I want to tell you that dementia is a real problem in our world. Worldwide, around 50 million people suffer from this debilitating disease, and it is heartbreaking. But did you know that there's another type of dementia that is impacting our world at even higher rates, and it very well could be impacting you and the life God wants you to live? So stay tuned so you can find out what that dementia is and exactly what you can do to stop it. Dementia is a terrible disease that has been around for centuries, but it was only first documented and named about 100 years ago by a German psychiatrist, Dr. Alois Alzheimer. And basically, dementia is a disease that involves memory loss and mental confusion, which can lead to things like poor judgment. But the type of dementia I want to talk to you about today isn't the one described by Dr. Alzheimer. Instead, the dementia we need to talk about is spiritual dementia. And spiritual dementia involves an individual suffering from the inability to remember the things that God has done for them in the past. And as a result of this deficit in their memory, this person will make decisions that just aren't the best. Now, in 1 Samuel, we find some stories that illustrate perfectly what spiritual dementia looks like, as well as exactly what you should do to prevent it. Now, in 1 Samuel chapter 7, the Israelites come to Samuel, begging him to cry out to the Lord on their behalf because they are sick and tired of being beat up on by the Philistines. So, of course, Samuel cries out to the Lord, and as a result, Israel defeats the Philistines. But this was no ordinary defeat. This defeat was a turning point for the Israelites because they were about to reclaim all the territory that the Philistines had taken from them, and they were finally at peace. But after this great defeat, Samuel did something interesting. He took what I imagine to be a very, very large stone and he placed it between Mizpah and Shen and named it Ebenezer, meaning the Lord helped us. Now, why would Samuel do this? What was the importance of this stone? Well, he did it because the stone was to be a memorial of what God had done for his people. So that every time an Israelite walked past this stone, they would reflect upon the great deliverance God had provided for them. And it was wise for Samuel to set this up because the fact is that we as human beings have a tendency to forget the things that God has done for us in the past. And Samuel understood the history of his people because after Moses died and then Joshua, the people developed some severe cases of spiritual dementia because they forgot about the God that had just delivered them and instead began worshiping false man-made gods. But sadly, their spiritual dementia wasn't totally cured because in the very next chapter, 1 Samuel chapter 8, you find the people making a seriously bad judgment call because you find them requesting that Samuel provide them a king so that they can be like other nations. Now understand, God's people have never had a king ruling over them because God was their king and he used prophets like Samuel to reveal his will to the people. But for some strange reason, the people want to be like the other nations. But Samuel, he knew that this was not right because he didn't have spiritual dementia. So he recognized the error in this request and he goes to God and he prays and he tells God about it. And God told Samuel to tell the people all the bad things that would happen to them if they had a king rule over them. He told them that the king would take their sons and daughters and that they would become workers for him. He would take the best of their lands for himself. He would take their livestock and they would become his servants. And when it was all said and done, they would then cry out to God because of the king that they asked for, and God would not hear them. But after all this, Samuel tells the people everything that God says. You know what the people's response was? So what? We don't care. We want a king anyway. Spiritual dementia at its finest. Because if the people truly remembered all the ways that God had led them in the past, if they remembered how he rained down stones from heaven to crush an army that had risen up against them. If they had remembered how they didn't have to lift up a finger and the walls of Jericho just came crashing down. If they remembered how the Red Sea had swallowed up their enemies, the Egyptian army. If they could only remember the Ebenezer stone that Samuel had just set up as a memorial of God's faithfulness. If they could only remember. Spiritual dementia is so dangerous because it causes us to forget and it causes us to make poor decisions. Many people today are suffering because of their own decisions that were made while they were plagued with spiritual dementia. Relationships are entered into, financial decisions are made, decisions that impact our health and well-being are made, as well as a host of other decisions are being made each day by individuals who are suffering from the mental confusion that results from spiritual dementia. Now, if that's you, don't worry, because it doesn't have to be you anymore, which is why I'm going to share with you 2 simple steps that will help you win the battle against spiritual dementia. Step number 1, follow the example of Samuel and make a memorial of the things that God has done and is doing for you. Now, this could involve writing it down in a journal, putting it on a sticky note and sticking it on your wall, or making a nice memorial photo book or some type of album, or whatever your mind can think of. Just be creative and think of ways that you can memorialize your blessings. Step number 2, review it often. You see, Samuel did the right thing in creating the memorial, but maybe the children of Israel didn't pass by it enough. Or maybe they passed by it, but they didn't take the time to reflect on the blessings that the stone represented. So whatever you do, review and reflect on the blessings as much as you can. Because apparently it's easy to forget, and it seems like it takes a little more effort to remember. But that's okay, because whatever work you have to do to prevent spiritual dementia, it will be well worth it. So, what do you think? Let us know by leaving a comment below, and also encourage someone else by sharing how you may have overcome spiritual dementia. Until next week, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and remember that you are extraordinary through Christ. God bless, and I'll talk to you next week.